Oh, okay, Wendy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Wendy?
George, we're good.
Great. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Okay, first I'd like to recognize that we're doing business on Tishat and Hippichesset First Nation territories. And a notice to attendees and delegates that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube and the Regional District website. And if we could do introductions around the room, maybe starting with Pam.
Good morning, everyone. Pam Crady, representing Beaver Creek.
Jenny Brunn, General Manager of Community Services.
Matt McLeod, Water Utilities Lead Hand.
Mike Kobus, Beaver Creek representative.
Harold Carlson, Beaver Creek representative.
Gord Blakey, Beaver Creek representative.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we need to add something, moving on to the agenda. We need to add Cherry Creek Improvement District onto the agenda at the beginning as a late item for a delegation. Now, is there any opposition to that, or is all in favor? Oh, okay. So,
Yeah, so we'll need a motion.
okay.
With the motion, Pam.
Thank you, Pam. Can we have a seconder? Thank you, Mike. Okay, all in favor of a late agenda item? Any opposed? Thank you, motion carried. Okay. So, first we'll do the minutes for the last meeting and then we'll move to the delegations. So the Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee meeting held on May 31st. Did everyone get a chance to read over the minutes, and were there any errors or corrections or business arising out of the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes or the motion that's presented in the agenda?
So
Okay, thank you, Harold. And a seconder? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor? Thank you. Motion approved. Now we're moving to petitions, delegations, presentations. Would someone or would people from the gallery like to speak or ask questions or make presentations or whatever you'd like? Yeah.
Thank you for allowing us to come to this meeting. I'm the Cherry Creek representative on the board. And I've asked the Cherry Creek Water Board to show up here to try and liaison with the Beaver Creek Advisory Committee on the pros and cons of going to conversion area, as they're going through a study right now. And I try to get them all the facts they can to make the decisions, which will be coming up. So basically, this is like a liaison between the two to get to know you people, know the people on the board, sorry. And also the people in charge, like Jenny, so they can ask their questions to the board and get the answers they need in order to move forward. And so there'll be no misconceptions in the future of what's going on. So with that, I guess Diane, Dana, to come up here and introduce yourself as you are the chair to the chair of this board and just see how it goes forward. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Forster. I'm the chair of the Improvement District. Thank you for having us here. We previously met with the staff of the ACRD and Susan and John, who have kind of gave us their input and how the conversion has went for you guys. And they all have their opinions. So I guess we're here just trying to gather information and see how others felt like the processes went and where you guys are at today, the pros and cons, and just wanting to gather more information at this point.
We have answers. Pam, would you like to speak?
Certainly. For my personal opinion, the work that we've done together with the ACRD has been very well received by anyone that I speak to in our residential area, and I'm on Smith Road. And my family's been a resident of Smith Road since 1948. And so also we're very supportive of the former Beaver Creek Water Board, but I feel that the addition of joining in with the ACRD and working hard together, it's been truly beneficial for our family as well as me personally.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to it? Gerald?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm Harold Carlson. Lived in the Beaver Creek for some time. Did spend 7 years on the Beaver Creek Water Board, and on half of that was chair. And I know the challenges we faced when we were the water board district, and that one of the main challenges was we were not able to access funding for capital projects by the provincial government means, which was lower interest rate and that. And after my time on there, on the board and that, there was the Beaver Creek Improvement District did propose engaging a private contractor to take over operation and management of the system. And I personally felt uncomfortable about that, but that did not get approved. And I think our relationship, the advantage we have with joining with a higher level of local government, i.e. the regional district, does give us better opportunity for seeking financing or grants in that regard for the improvements. And I've been impressed with the need. The Beaver Creek system originally had transite water mains, which are problematic, depending on the soil conditions primarily, or the actual how they're bedded or whatnot with leaks and that. We've really got behind the ball in replacement of those. From what little that I know, I've read about the Courtney area, they're really suffering, not right now, much greater expense of having to replace that distribution infrastructure. So yeah, that's my take on the water district, turning over the responsibility to the regional district.
Thank you, Harold. Janet?
Thank you. Have you guys felt like you've remained having a voice for your guys' water system, that that your input was valued?
Absolutely. I have no problem at all. We sit here together and meet on a regular basis, and ACRD personnel are easily accessible if we have an issue or need to report on something that our neighbors are telling us. So I've had absolutely no problem at all.
I concur with that. We've had a good working relationship in the past.
I'm Wayne Smith. I'm one of the directors on our water board, and I got some concerns here. And of course, I guess at this point in time, we're looking forward. There's been a complete change to the landscape to do with infrastructure. One of the ones that I believe it just passed in the legislature is the new regulations to do with zoning and allowing more density in the city. So I think I would be concerned if I was a Beaver Creek resident on the density of Port Alberni being increased here by, I think they're allowed to put up to 5 or 6 residences on lots inside the city. I think this is a municipality thing that they're going to do here. It doesn't go into any of the improvement districts or anything like that. But I would be kind of concerned that as we move forward down the road, with the density of Port Alberni, it's going to increase by a lot. Right now, you guys are getting all your water from Beaver Creek, or all the Beaver Creek is getting it bulk from the city. Would you not be worried that you guys are going to see a big increase because there's going to be more demand? I don't even think the city is going to be able to keep up with the water supply for their needs, never mind you guys. So I wonder if anybody's ever thought that maybe if you had went back a few years and you had your own treatment plant, you'd be kind of independent. That's it for now.
Hi, Wayne. I'd like to speak to that. I agree with you completely. That's Bill 44. And these smaller property sizes will be permitted to subdivide in the city and also in the electoral areas. And there will be additional capacity required by the city. We're not on the top of the priority list. We're city residents first. So, it definitely has an impact on us and our bulk, if we had a bulk water agreement. I'm thinking that Cherry Creek and Beaver Creek, and this is just forward thinking, and we're supposed to think this way, that we could get together and do a water system together and save costs in that way. I don't know if it's possible, and it would need to have a proper study and engineers involved. But there would be cost savings that way. And I'd like to get our own source water back and, pick up where we left off 10 years ago as far as the water system itself, adding advanced water treatment, seeing if we can get access to federal and provincial infrastructure grants. For communities our size, we can get up to 80% of the cost. So it's huge if we are able to get it, but I think we could because drinking water is a pretty high priority with all governments. So that's my point of view. Did anyone else want to speak to that?
No. Well, first I want to ask a question. Would that be, are you thinking of going back to Beaver Creek Improvement District, being responsible?
No, I was thinking going back to where we left off, where rather than having a bulk water agreement with the city, that we would go back to perhaps the Stamp River, but maybe another water source, and then have a new water source and then add advanced water treatment for Beaver Creek, but also sharing with Cherry Creek if possible.
So, can you hear me, Susan?
Yes.
Hello?
Go ahead, Gord.
So what you're saying is, we're going to go back to what was trying to be done with Corex and the Beaver Creek Improvement District at that time. But so then we went in with the regional district, which was fine. But I guess it's too bad there wasn't a lot more thought gathered then that the money should have been used for what we were going to do with Corex on that system and not building a fancy pump house to buy water from the city. But hindsight's 2020, I guess. So what do we do?
I agree, Gord. I think that we could go back to that point. And, we know that Corex came up with plans. I think there was 3 different options that we could have used. Why can't we go back and see what our options are? And I'm pretty sure, in talking with people in Beaver Creek, that's the will of the people. I'm not 100% sure. And of course, it would have to go to a proper assent referendum ballot in the end, but I think that's what people want. Jenny?
Thank you, Chair. And great questions, and glad you guys are here. I think that's a really valid concern. I think that was one of the biggest concerns as well for Beaver Creek Improvement District. I wasn't around at the time. And those are really big picture questions. I don't know if it matters if you're asking that question and solving it as an improvement district or as part of the regional district. So my perspective from a water manager item is that it wouldn't matter if I was working for an improvement district or for the ACRD. There's a process that you go through when you're trying to decide what is the long-term plan and how do you manage water. And so generally speaking, the best practices are that you create a master plan, and you look at things and you develop your plan and move forward to get good financing and things like that. I think Beaver Creek is in an interesting place where we do have some questions on the table that we need to answer. Those are big questions. We've got a report on the agenda that we're going to talk about and what the next steps are. And we get to work through that step by step. I think that it's important not to necessarily assume that working with the regional district means that that there is a city water source at the end of that path. Because, and maybe the committee can speak more to that, my understanding is that those were two separate, relatively time-wise, they have been very similar, because it was one of the reasons that the improvement district came to the regional district is because of the funding, right? So there was no funding capacity in order to address the big question. The big question is very similar to what Cherry Creek is trying to answer. So you have a water source. Potentially, in order to move forward, you need to pay for really expensive treatment. Is there other options? What should we be doing? I don't think that question is going to change, or the answers or options are going to change whether you're an improvement district or working with the ACRD. And I just wanted to put that into context for the committee, because regardless, you should be going through the best, decision-making process and come up with the best answer. The other thing that I think the regional district has as a benefit is that we operate other water systems. So right now, we operate the Beaver Creek water system. We also have the Bamfield water system. We have Millstream. We have other water systems. So we have a bit of a network of resources, and we're able to do a little bit of economy of scale with that. If we take over, if we operate more water systems, we will have more economy of scale, because then you have centralized staff who have that specialty who can help to support things. So I think those are the considerations that I think of from a very operational management perspective. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to add to this? Were there more questions from the Cherry Creek? Or comments? Feel free. Wayne?
Yeah, I kind of hear what you say, and that makes a lot of sense. But there's one thing that kind of concerns me right now, and it's back to this bill or this legislation, is what they've done with this here, and it kind of really concerns me, is that they have basically overwritten all of the official community plans. They just did that in a stroke of just like that, and they've even, from what I understand, there's no need for public hearings in these things. So whatever your project for the future, they've changed the landscape on the way they're going to actually be, they're going to be dictating to us on how we're going to run our water systems and our whole municipality systems. So, I'm kind of worried about anything we do that could end up putting us in that position where we're being regulated by the provincial government. As long as we got a board that is able to make the decisions, I think that we'd be better, at least in the short term. Maybe, and I'm saying maybe next year or two, before this all sort of, the waters become clear as to what we're really facing here. Because Vancouver Island right now, there is just so much going on with people moving here, and Port Alberni is the last place that hasn't really been undeveloped. It's like a tidal wave at the top of that hump waiting to come in here. So, I do a lot of business around the island, and I talk to a lot of my customers down in Langford, Comox. They want to get out. It's just changed so bad. What's going on there. So, we got an opportunity here to be independent, I think, but we need to keep as much control as we can right now. It's just that I just don't, I was kind of surprised that they would actually do that, overrided the public input, which is your official community plan. So that's just one of the concerns I have right now. But I understand it would be nice if we could all work together. We could save a lot, but it's like they're trying to divide us a little bit, so that we got to two issues. There was the battle, so I think we do need to kind of work together and just, anyway.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Wayne, are you thinking that if you remain an improvement district, that you will have less responsibility to Bill 44? Would that be right?
Well, I guess what I'm thinking here, just specifically with the water board, we're trustees, right? And director, we have more power than I think an advisory committee does. An advisory committee, if you look at what an advisory committee does, you have your advisory groups for the official community plans. Like I said, they just overrode all of that. So that means like they're not even accepting input anymore on that. We have the same problem in the farming industry, agricultural. They have all the advisory committee does is just give advice. It doesn't mean they have to take it. I think it's a little bit different. My understanding is when you've got an actual directors that are trustees, that's like a director of a corporation. So that carries a little more weight. That's my understanding anyhow.
And that's true because we are an advisory board. Whenever I go back to the boardroom table, I don't have to accept anything at this table. It's just advice. So you're completely right that it is different and that trustees do have more power on their collective power. Would anybody else? Oh, sure.
Hi, my name is Bob Babbage. I'm a Cherry Creek trustee. I have some concerns in this whole water system with being supplied by the city. You're fairly new into this, and already there's a lot of squawking going on about how unhappy, or I'm sure there's a number of people that are happy with it. And just so it's another thing out of the way that's dealt with and it's gone. But I'm really scratching my head about the unhappiness about what's going on. And I don't know what sort of binding contracts that you have with the city, or if it's just an annual thing that you renew every year or whatever. But as Wayne said, there's definitely a lot of concerns to be looked at here. I personally think the independence makes more sense to me. Cost-wise, I don't know, all that has to be addressed and looked at. But I think that if we start burdening up the city too much, it could end up really biting everybody. Now, whether it's a cost factor or whether it's a supply factor, there's at some point in time, something's got to break. So Beaver Creek has been standalone for a number of years in the past. And again, like our last meeting, there was definitely challenges there to be looked at. But, I would like to see that there was some brainstorming that maybe, it needs to be looked at a lot closer, especially with discontentment about things.
I just say one thing, the city of Port Alberni did end our agreement with bulk water. And I think that it continues till the end of 2025, is that right? And it was due to a very small issue. We asked for an extension of 2 more water connections, and that gave them the ability to pull out. But there's other factors at play here too, because from what I understand, the city residents are unhappy with us buying bulk water because they think that we pay less than what they do. They're not factoring into consideration that we pay the ACRD for the distribution system and management of the system. They're only looking at it from, how much they pay per cubic meter to how much we pay for a bulk water per cubic meter. So there definitely is problems.
Yeah.
And it does definitely make me feel insecure. Would anybody like to speak on that?
Susan? Well, okay.
Gord, go ahead.
Did you say go ahead for Gord?
Yes. Yes.
Is it not advantageous to stay under the regional district when it comes to getting money as opposed to going back to an improvement district?
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that stay under the regional district umbrella as we are. And we still have, the same kind of access and everything, but I'm not sure. How did you interpret what I said, Gord? How did you interpret what I said? I think I might have said something off a little bit.
Well, no, just the conversation that has gone on, like Wayne mentioned, being independent. Now, I took that as being independent to being an improvement district and not being tied in with the regional district. And my question is, would it not be more advantageous to get grant money if you are working under the regional district?
Wayne or Bob, would you like to speak to that? Because it is true that we do have access to federal and provincial infrastructure grants through the ACRD, but the improvement district doesn't have that. Wayne?
Yeah, I think it's pretty, how do I best describe that? It's like they've got a carrot at the end of a stick here. And, you know, I guess there's maybe a little bit of money there. And I'm not too sure exactly how it's all going to work out. We're going through the same thing right now. How much is this going to cost us to build a new treatment plant? Can we even afford it? And I guess that's the whole issue. We're trying to gather as much input as we can here. You know, so I'm not so certain that the money they're putting out there as an incentive is really worth what you're getting to give up. One thing I want to add here that a while back, we had a meeting here and John McNabb kind of gave us a history of where you guys were way back when you decided to join with the ACRD on that. And one of the things was, I guess your options back there were to move your intake further up the stream. Then you would have not had the sedimentation getting in there. You know, that was back then. I guess it would cost a lot of money to move the intake. But have you gotten any thought about trying to get funds to actually to try to do that now? Bring it because the intake, because like I said, it goes back to the same thing. The city's going to be trying to keep all the water they got for their own needs. I think that looking down the road, you guys should really be thinking about developing your system because you're right on the river. I mean, that's all the water anybody could ever just dream for, you know? So all you got to do is move the intake. I don't know what that's going to cost, but to answer your question, as far as funds for that, there might be money available for that now. Because isn't there a bunch of money they're giving to all the municipalities around the province to improve their infrastructure? Maybe we should be looking at that. That's something that wasn't there a month ago. They weren't even talking about that. So just something else. That's what I mean. Everything is different now than it was a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you, Wayne. Harold?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm fortunate that we, this last item was added to our agenda with the discussion being held at the front end because we have other matters to discuss further on. It's very applicable to overall. A bit of my history. I recall when I first lived in the valley here some time back, and I've unfortunately forgot the name of the fellow who was chair of the Beaver Creek Water Board. But he was a machinist in the mill where I worked in Pulp Mill. And he asked me about my opinion because at that time, the people in Beaver Creek were, they've always had concerns about the quality of water from their water distribution. And it had to be upstream of the junction of the Sprout River with the Stamp River because they were concerned about the potential pollution of water from Sprout Lake contaminating their supply. And at that time, they were in need of more water, and they were attracted by the waterfall that you see up in the Beaufort Hills in the summertime on the back end of Beaver Creek. I believe it's Hell Creek. And I wasn't all that familiar with the district at the time. I actually grew up in Paul River. My parents lived here in Port Alberni before I was born. But the fellow who was him, unfortunately, I forgot his name, asked me if I'd come and talk to the board at that time. And I expressed my opinion then. I was familiar with that stream you could see or whatnot. But I cautioned them, that hillside is going to be logged down in the future. And as it turns out, it's a pretty wild stream. It's the one that actually the bottom goes through Wayne Cowley's Point. And I've been involved with trail systems throughout the whole valley. And we never did put a bridge for recreation across Hell Creek on the log train trail because that channel moves. And there's a lot of debris comes down when it's in flood or snow melts occurring higher up. There was always a thought in people's mind that Great Central Lake would be the ideal water source. And that was even investigated by the water board of Beaver Creek. And the cost estimates at that time, which made it out of reach. And since then, I think we lost the ability to even consider utilizing the old railway grade right away that used to Beaver Creek, because that's been sold off now. That was the one that served the sawmill that used to exist at Great Central Lake. The advantage of the city water, it is in a rather isolated area, although it is the current logging and that does impact on it. But the city water source have the ability in times when, just as we're in right now, when China Creek, and China Creek's quite flashy in that there are times when it has extremely high levels and there's turbidity concern. The city water supply switches to Bainbridge Heights. I know in the Beaver Creek, drawing from the Somas River, turbidity was always a concern. And it affects your ability for chlorination and so on. If we go back to that source, I would suspect we'd be required to put in filtration capacity as well. And as such, probably a full-time operator. We used to pay an awful lot of overtime expenses for the operation of the existing one, just to backflush the intake. Because that was a procedure we had to do with the, to prevent the clogging up of the intake into the pump station. There's a lot of technical things to consider here. And so far, the city water supply seems to be perfectly adequate. Who knows with climate change? And that's happening faster than was previously predicted. We may run out. In terms of population density, I think back when it was like in the 70s or whatnot, when we had problems with septic systems, the Beaver Creek area, Cherry Creek area. And that is a control measure for governing the, density of population in rural regions, because we do not have sewage collection facilities. There's a lot of things to consider. I was really surprised to learn that the Alberni region, long time ago, separated their stormwater drainage from the city sewage way back. Port Alberni didn't. And they're facing a fair hefty cost now in separating those two. So there's a lot of things to consider before, but we do know there's a lot of places in BC and whatnot where multiple municipalities, cities or whatnot, do obtain their potable water from a common source. And we just, there's examples to see, what the cost structures are in those situations. Something we'll be discussing later in this meeting.
Harold, Mike?
I'm not sure if now is the time to bring this up, but with the directors meeting that you had last week, was there not a motion put forward to do all this study and everything else for this? So I think I think we're flogging a dead horse right now with a lot of information for everything else. With that, I think the money that's been put aside, or it's going to be put aside for the development and looking into it, Wayne, of what the feasibility study is to go back to where we were or to whether we stay with the city. I think they've got till 2024, at the end of 2024, to have this assessment done and have that information there. You make valid points. There's a lot of valid points. I have my own personal points out of it because thinking back in the day that when they tried to keep everything and upgrading the water system and Gord, pipe in, or Harold in the past, and even Susan, who sat on the board at that time, their decision at that point in time was to go and come to the regional district to be able to get funding and everything else. And looking at that cost was very, very expensive at that time. I'd hate to see what that cost is now, right? So the chance they took, and there was turbidity, a bunch of other stuff. I mean, I would never want to lose the rights. Don't get me wrong with that. But, hopefully this study comes out and says, yes, we should do this as a water treatment plant and have the backup as a city. Or, you know what, when you look at the cost to the taxpayer, because that's what this really all about, is it better for us to pay 20 cents more or whatever? I'm just throwing a number, 20 cents more to the city to upgrade and can maintain it and all the headache, because we do maintain our own water, right? As you guys do. Right. So we've got Matt and the rest of the crew that maintain all that water. So when I look at that stuff there, but I think that study will bring that all out and be more clarification for all of us on what's going to happen. I think for me, we can keep talking about this forever. But till that study is done and all the true facts are out, we can make whatever speculation, what we feel in our heart or what we want for our own community. Right. But till we have that information, this is my just personal opinion. We can't make a good decision out of it.
Thank you. Wayne?
I just wanted to add to that. That's really good points. And just something to put things in perspective here. Being a farmer, I've worked with a lot of farmers around Vancouver Island and all the way to Saskatchewan, in fact. But, our water is, no matter what it costs, it's still cheap. Friends of mine that are not on, they're up on Mount Washington, they just spent $10,000 just to fix their well, because it had been plugged up after 30 years. I got other friends that have spent $30,000 trying to get water. They're trucking in their drinking water. This is pretty common around the east coast of the island, all up and down there. We just happen to be pretty lucky. So almost no matter what it costs, my personal opinion is it's still cheap compared to, because water is the number one thing you need in your house. But thanks for that. Those are all good points.
Thank you, Wayne. Would anyone else like to speak from the gallery, I guess we call that? Bob?
So I'll just be short and sweet. Mike, good points.
Yes.
But with that, like you're saying, that study's going to be done. We got till the end of 2024. We're in the process right now. So we're trying to acquire as much information as possible and want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So good point, though.
Thank you. Did everyone get a chance to speak that wants to speak or ask questions? You're all good? Okay, there'll be a question period at the end if you choose to stay through the meeting, that you can ask more questions at the end if you'd like. Thank you. Okay, we'll move forward to requests for decision. And this is about the City of Port Alberni bulk water agreement rate letter. Jenny, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As we've alluded to with the delegation, this is a big topic of question here. Basically, at our last meeting, we had looked at expanding our water boundaries, and we passed a resolution that we then took to the city through our bulk water agreement to ask to extend the boundaries. The the resolution went to council to consider that. And I think that we have a lot of new councillors on the city as well. And so a lot of them were looking at the agreement and there were some concerns that were raised. And I'm speaking to really what the additional information that we sort of gleaned from having staff to staff discussions and meetings. But just to follow chronologically, we received a letter back that said that that the city would like to give termination notice because the existing bulk water agreement has no end date, but they would like to make some changes to the agreement. So they provided our termination notice. They also said that if we wanted to immediately re-enter into the agreement to bring up the water rate to 100% of the residential rate versus 75% of the residential rate. So that did go in camera because at the time it was an in-camera response due to issues around that. It was discussed at the board and we did pass it. There was a resolution passed to do a study basically to look at what the other options are. So whether to stay with the city source, look at other options, and then also to refer this back to the committee and to meet with staff to get some more information. So since that meeting, we have gotten the letter out of camera, which is why we're speaking in open meeting right now about this item, which is good. We also met with city staff last week and had a great discussion about this, really to get more information because the letter was an interestingly written letter. And so I had a lot of questions. So we had a really good chat. And what became very clear to me is that some of the concerns that the city had, and they're looking at all of their agreements across the board, is that they wanted to modernize their contracts. So they're seeing that they have contracts that they just aren't seeing because they don't have renewal or review terms in them. So they've got contracts that are 30 years old, and you shouldn't have contracts that are sitting around that are 30 years old. We agree with that as well. So they're interested in, if we are going to renew a bulk water agreement, would have a term. So we would have a renewal, right? So it renews on every 5 years. We all take a look at it. We're happy with the terms. I think that's good governance and good practice. So that was one of the first ones. When it came to the rate, when we really dug into what was going on is that the city right now does want to make sure that they are recovering their costs. And I think that they're at a point where, again, they have a lot of new staff that are looking at their water system and how they're managing things. And they want to make sure that they are doing good governance for their water system. And that looks at, as we do, right? We want to make sure that we have a full cost rate recovery. As a regional district, we're quite blessed in the way that we are structured because a water service is a standalone item. So all of the costs, including long-term asset management, are all contained specifically to Beaver Creek. And municipalities struggle a little more because they operate out of one pot, right? And I've worked at municipalities, so I understand and I know how challenging that is and how nice it is to be at a regional district. So right now they've identified that they really need to look at their rates, and it is us, right? We're one of the rates and the users on the system, but really it's all of their rates across the board. So they have made a priority to do a water master plan for themselves. Some of the things that have been spoken about this morning already is that the city water system is on a bit of a deferral, right? So they use the China Creek system and then Bainbridge, which is they don't have a formal deferral for filtration, which is expensive if they had to do filtration. Many water systems have been able to get that through watershed protection and watershed management and a lot of different systems which are more cost effective and still have good outcomes for water quality. So I think that that is their long-term strategy, but right now they don't necessarily have a comprehensive watershed management plan in place in order to check that box with the Vancouver Island Health Authority. So that's a big one that they're going to be facing. When they look at their master plan and their 20-year, 50-year capital plan on what it's going to take for them to provide water to all of the city and any of their bulk waters, including us, they really need to be doing that long-term visioning, right? Like what is all of the physical infrastructure as well as watershed management? We talk about climate change. That master plan really has to think about what's going to be required. And then you're also getting a really like a quality asset management plan. And then what really is going to be on the books. We have made really good strides, I think, within our water system. It's small, it's manageable. We've got great staff working on it. And we also have been really focusing on asset management over the last 5 years. So for us, we're pretty confident that our 20, 30, 50-year plan, we are putting money away for that renewal and replacement and have a quality plan. I think that they want to make sure that they're as confident in their water system, providing water not just to their residents, but to bulk water users outside. And so that is one of their highest priorities. They're working on an RFP to issue that, to get a consultant to work on that starting in the new year. They want to keep us included because obviously we're a stakeholder, because we are a big water user. We're the biggest bulk water user. They're only big bulk water user. So making sure, that we're involved in that, and we can, because we have that technical operational expertise. Potentially, as their watershed management starts to unfold over the next 2 years, we'll need to be involved in that as well. A lot of interactive stuff working on that. So with that, the intent of the master plan will be to look at that. And then also, because it's going to be doing that magnitude of cost for their capital upgrades, we'll find out what are the actual rates that need to be in place for their residents as well as for Beaver Creek. And again, the commitment was that we'd be involved in that to discuss that, because I think that, as has been raised, there's a question on what is the appropriate rate. In local government, the rate simply is the cost, because we're not here to make a profit. So it's kind of nice that way. It can be very cut and dry. Is all of the things on the books the cost of operating the system there? And if so, then that's what the cost is. And then you can charge that in a number of ways. One of the things we talked about, and getting probably into the minutiae here of rate setting, is whether it's a base rate plus a consumption rate. You guys have all sorts of different utility bills. There's many different models for doing that. And I think that would be a consideration, again, moving forward. But the messaging that I really heard, the letter was one thing, but what I'm really hearing from the city is they want to have a modern agreement that is good for everyone involved, that is that builds a long-term sustainable water system. I don't think they're worried about capacity. I know that they can see the benefit of the economy of scale of having Beaver Creek residents as consumers, because the capacity is there, the infrastructure is there. And if you plan for it for growth, I think it makes sense to be on one system. I also expressed to them and explained obviously where we're at, and that we have a resolution to do a study to look at alternate options. So looking at what it would look like, whether we go back to the stamp, and absolutely would have to do filtration if we go back to our old water source, investigating other water sources, and then looking at the city as a source. And then basically, what is that for us? Again, all that, the same information, but we're doing it on our scale, is what are going to be the capital costs for that? What would be the operating costs? And then comparing those to make the best decision for the water system. So we have those two. The resolutions on this report are to, it's the same resolution that was passed at the board, and we're looking for the committee to support that, which is a little backwards of what we normally do, but it was just a timeline issue. And the other resolution that we proposed is that we are asking the committee to recommend that you direct staff to continue to work with the city of Port Alberni concurrently on the city's water master planning the city's water master planning and rate structure update, as well as working towards drafting an updated bulk water agreement for consideration. Because I think it's important that we move forward on all options until we know which option we would be selecting. And I don't want to not continue to work with the city on that relationship if that ends up being the solution that we choose. I'm sure I've talked too much on this, so please let me open up to questions. Pam?
No, thank you very much, Danny. It's very helpful. I'm going to get the motion on the table, so I want to move this motion, and then we can discuss it.
So move both of them, Pam?
Yes, please.
Do we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Harold. Okay, questions. Pam, did you want to start?
I'm really listening closely to what Jenny's been saying, and really, I don't have the detail to really make a decision I feel comfortable with. So I really appreciate the study and that discussion moving forward over a long time. And I think we all live in this community, and we're not a city necessarily resident, but certainly our home is Port Alberni. So I really feel that we can have an adult conversation with those councillors sitting at the table, and as our neighbors, would be accommodating to work with us. And that's the only way we're going to get to a valley decision that's going to work for all our citizens. So I think this discussion and looking at the plans, finding out what the actual costs are the most important factors here.
Thank you. Anyone else like to discuss? Mike?
I think for me also is that, when you look at not having all the costs, like I said earlier to the Cherry Creek members, is that we don't have all the facts yet. Yeah, we've been told that the contract is up in 2025. We have lots of time to work towards that. So jumping to conclusions without having all the facts, I think, is wrong. When I take all my hats off, and as a Beaver Creek person, of course I'd love to have my own thing, but we had attempted that many years ago and found that we weren't able to do it. But if that's looking for the future, is that cost benefit works out to that favor, so be it. But I think we need to have all of that facts before we can make any kind of informed decision for it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to it? I just like to say one thing. When you speak about the watershed, it's privately owned forest companies. So I definitely see a concern there for the city. And I see, I like these motions because it keeps everything still going and it allows us to look at ourselves, because that was part of the problem we had, wasn't it, Harold? When we were an improvement district, was the logging on the hillside did have an impact, right now, on our water system, and it increased turbidity and created all kinds of problems. Not to say that we can't move our source water, but yeah, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this? Gord, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I gotta concur with Mike there. We got to get some more answers out of this. There's money being put out to do a study. Then I think we can make a lot better decision on it once we know it's there. So we got to move ahead.
Thank you. Harold, did you want? Thank you. Matt, did you have anything you want to? Did we cover everyone? I like the idea of exploring it. I'm just a little bit worried that $50,000 isn't enough. Is it enough?
We'll be doing a terms of reference and scoping out the work, and we'll issue it for RFP, and we will see what comes back for those costs. We have asked around, and we think 50,000 is appropriate, but we will know when the numbers come in.
Perfect. Perfect. So are we ready to vote on it? Okay, all in favor of the two motions? Any against? No, motion carried. Thank you. So now we can move forward to the reports. And it was the monthly versus quarterly meter read. Did anyone have any comments, or would someone like to make the motion?
Yes, I would like to comment on it. I was one asking that question. I'm shocked that it's not automated more than what it is. And if it's going to cost that much money, then we're not going to do a monthly read on it. That's for sure. I thought it was way more sophisticated and automated that didn't involve so much time by people. So I'm glad somebody looked into that for me. Now we know.
Thank you, Gord. Any other comments? Can I get a motion then?
I'll move the motion, Craig.
Can I get a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Gord. All in favor? Motion carried. Question period. Any questions from the gallery?
What's for lunch?
No, we're all good? Okay. And what about any questions or comments from the public? Is there any?
Wendy Hayes, is there any questions on the email address?
or people participating?
Sorry, no questions from the public.
Okay, so I guess we can adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
And a seconder? Thank you, Harold. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.